Maine. Man, what a great state, and how big is the state of Maine. I started out with the idea of fishing in the central part of Maine, shooting a show or two. Once I got there and discovered how much water and how many lakes are in the state of Maine, I wanted to travel way north and fish the largest lake in the state, Moosehead Lake. Doesn't have a reputation for smallmouth, doesn't have a reputation for bass at all. It's got a lot of big northerns, different types of trout, and lake trout is the big deal up there. But I want to go up there and smallmouth fish. I want to see this gigantic lake, 78,000 acres is Moosehead. We're going to go up there and try to figure out how to catch a smallmouth at Moosehead Lake in Maine. It's going to be more of an adventure than I normally do, so it's going to be a fun show. You stay with me. I'm Hank Parker.
That's a first for me. I've been a lot of places, fished a lot of lakes, fished a lot of area, been all over the country, and that's the first one I've seen. Attention, high rate of moose crashes, not moose hits. If you hit a moose, it is a crash.
So here we are on Moosehead. I fished a couple of different lakes in Maine, working my way up to Moosehead, so I'm totally convinced that it's going to be about sight fishing, because at Great Pond and Sebec, sight fishing was everything. Tubes, jigs, shaky head, sinking worms, all the above was very effective. And water temperature was 62, 63, 64, perfect temperature for spawning smallmouth. Well, I start looking before I really pay a lot of attention to what my temperature gauge is telling me. So I get out there, man, and I'm looking in all these places, and I don't see any fish. And I look at my temperature and I thought, is that possible? 53.1. Can that water be that cold? I just left 64 degrees. How can it be 10 degrees cold? You stick your hand in the lake, it's cold. When it's 51, 52 degree water temperature in the morning, 54 and 55 in the afternoon, those fish have not moved up to spawn yet. They're in that pre-spawn, whereas at Great Pond and Sebec, it was spawn and post-spawn. So I'm in a different world. So what are we gonna do? Well, originally when I got to Maine, I figured that far north the water was going to be colder, and this little cutter 110, which has become my favorite jerkbait in the whole wide world, this little cutter 110 that Berkeley builds was my bait of choice. I caught a few fish, but a very few. I realized pretty early this was not going to be the bait for Great Pond. Then when I got to Sebec, I did the same thing.
Really big ones in here.
It was not the bait of choice. Now I'm on Moosehead, 51 degree, 52 degree, up to 54 degree water temperature. This is the choice. This is the bait.
There he is. Big old smallmouth, big smallmouth. Big smallmouth. Oh yeah, big smallmouth. Look at this. Big smallmouth on the old jerkbait. Come here, buddy. Come here, buddy. Come here, buddy. Oh yeah, look at that one. Look at that fish. Oh man, I made it to Moosehead, and there's my first Moosehead smallmouth. Look at that dude. Wow. That is a fish, boys and girls.
Let me tell you about this bait. It's a balanced bait, it's a suspend and jerk bait. So the trick to fishing this bait effectively is to get it down there, jerk it, make it really erratic, but not so aggressive that fish that are lethargic in cold water won't fall for it. If you make it too difficult, they'll just watch it go by. So the whole deal is very important. When you jerk that bait down there and you get it where you want it, make sure you feed that line back, that you have slack line. If you keep that line taut, that bait will nose up and it will not look like a normal bait fish. But if you leave it there on slack line, that bait will just pause right there in its tracks and look just like a real bait fish. So be sure when you jerk that bait down, you get it where you want it, just ease back and let that bait sit there on slack line.
I'd love to get in a school of them on a point like this, and it could happen. There he is. Jerk bait, another big one, another big one. Look at this. Oh yeah, another giant. Oh. That was a giant. That was way bigger than the last. That fish was over 6. Yeah. Man, we might have something going here. That was a giant. Look at the deer in the water. See it walking on the island out there? He came back and got it. He came back and got it. Another big one. Another big one. He came back and got it. Another big one. He's not as big as that last one, but he's a big one. Look at that thing. Wow, wow, wow. Moose head, come on. Golly, look what another big fish. Big old smallmouth. Yeah, I wish I'd have caught that one while ago. It dwarfed these things, I'm telling you. This is so awesome. This is so awesome. Yeah. Water temperature is a lot colder here. We're further north than where we've been fishing by about probably 100 miles. Maine. Isn't that beautiful? Look at that big old pretty thing. Pretty thing. I'm looking for rock piles. Now we're starting up on the rocks. I don't care who you are, that's cool. There he is. There he is. Another good one. Another good one. Another good one. Another good one. Look at that big old rascal. Look at that big rascal. Come in here. Oh, yeah. Yes, sir. Look at that big brown fish. Man alive, this water is cold. It's like ice. When you stick your hand down there, it's 51 degrees. So these fish are nowhere near as advanced. So this is not going to be a quantity deal. This is going to be a quality deal. Look at that. Hey, don't go away. We're finally figuring things out.
Hank's Show is made possible in part by Luz. Feel the difference. And by Minn Kota. Soft Science. Solar Bat. And Talon. Now it's time for Hank's Tip of the Day.
Berkeley hard baits, I cannot say enough about them. They work with several different professionals. They understood that market before they ever really got involved, and worked with David Fritz, and I'm a big David Fritz fan. I cannot tell you how many tournaments David Fritz won throwing a crankbait that nobody else could figure out. He could put it together and make it work. So he worked with these guys really, really close into getting these baits, and I love what they've done. First, let me just start out with the cutter. This is called a Skinny Cutter 110. I am a jerkbait fanatic. I work so hard to get jerk baits perfect. I'll change weights of hooks, split rings. I'll take split rings off the nose and tie king sling knots to reduce weight to get that bait to run right. And when I threw this cutter, I could not believe it. This thing was perfect out of the box. How did they do that? I've never bought one that suited me to a T out of the box like this Skinny Cutter 110. This bait is awesome. Now they make it in a couple different sizes, but this is by far my favorite, the 110. Then they came up with the War Pig. It's a lipless crankbait that has a great balance, a lot of action. This bait runs true, it falls true. It's a unique bait that I really, really like. It's called the War Pig. And then for years, one of the best crankbaits I ever used, Berkley made it, called a Flick a Shad. They took that Flick a Shad and made some slight improvements, better graphic work, and now it's called the Bad Shad. So if you were a Flick a Shad fan that's gone away, you can replace it with your Bad Shad. They have a smaller size, Bad Shad, and if you look beside it, it says 5. So that will run 5 feet deep. Is that not cool? And then they came up with the names that's descriptive of kind of what they'll do. This is a pit bull, which is a square bill. And so pit bull's very fitting name. It'll get in like an old bulldog and just root around. Now this is the most weedless, called the wild thing, because it'll hit a stump, man, it goes everywhere. It's wild. It'll go all over the bottom. All right, and then we start the Dredger series. These baits are incredible. How about a Dredger 14.5? How about a little deeper? How about a Dredger 17.5, 20.5, 25.5? You say, well, why would I need a bait that runs 17 feet deep? If I got a bait that runs 25 feet deep, why would I not just use the 25-foot bait, and that way I got it covered anywhere between 10 and 25 feet deep? Well, if you take a bait that's designed to run 25 feet deep and you throw it up there in 16, 17 foot of water, the angle of that bait is going to be digging down in the ground. It's going to be a little bit unnatural. If you take a bait that's designed to run 17 feet deep and you're up there, it's more of a natural angle and looks more realistic, and you get a little bit more sporadic action where it'll hit and bounce off the bottom rather than just keep digging in. So getting the bait that runs the right depth is optimal to perform to catch the fish. So the new Berkley hard baits, they rock. Well, we're back at Old Moosehead. Came in here yesterday with just a couple hours to fish and caught some giants. It's probably going to be slower than we anticipated, but if I could just catch 2 or 3 more of those big giants, I'm totally happy. Boy, it's a completely different day than we've had since I've been in the whole state of Maine. No wind, beautiful, bright, sunny. It's cold. Don't know what today holds, but I promise you this, I'm as excited as a kid in a candy shop.
Hank's Show is brought to you in part by Ranger Boats, still building legends one at a time. Mercury Marine, go boldly.
You know, I fish a lot of bodies of water, 30,000, 40,000 surface acres, huge lakes. Moosehead, 78,000 surface acres, what a gigantic lake. And a lot of questions you get is, how do you fish a lake that big and cover that much water effectively? And I can tell you, if that's what you are attempting to do, is fish that whole 78,000 acres of water, you're going to be one confused person. You've got to segregate a certain area and say, this is the geographical area that I'm going to fish, and I'm going to pick it apart. And you have to stay within that parameter. If you start just running and making long runs and trying to cover too much water, it will overwhelm you. So I knew when I got to Moosehead, we put in at the state park, and I knew that I was going to stay within 3 or 4 miles of that state park in any direction. I didn't try to fish 78,000 acres. I tried to fish like 500 acres. So it makes a difference when you approach a new body of water the attitude and your strategies going in. But I promise you, there may be times that you fish down at the dam and then you crank up and go all the way to the upper end of the river and go 75 miles and you're successful. But those times will be a lot less than the times that you'll be effective fishing a small section and take it a little step at a time.
He hit it. He hit it. And then I came back on it. Buddy. Golly, wow, that little mouth is hard to get a hold of. Oh, man. Now I got him. Yeah, he is just as big. I didn't think he was as big. They're a little bit sluggish in this cold water. It's like 52 degrees. They're a little bit sluggish. Is this not awesome? This lake, Maine, has got so many incredible lakes. This is not even on the radar screen. It's the largest lake. I'm gonna get back here because that sun's playing games with us, I know. It's the largest lake in the state, and it is so famous for big giant lake trout and trout, brook trout, rainbow, everything. It's a trout fishery, so they don't make a big deal out of it for the bass. And a guy told me, he said, you ought to go try it. You may not catch but one or two, but there'll be big ones. Man, this is incredible. Big ones is right. I've done this at Champlain. Get out off of one of these islands and just see those 3 and 4 pounders out there swimming around. There he is, got him. Right at the boat, hit right at the boat. I watched him, he followed it. We have not caught a fish that didn't weigh 4 pounds yet. Every fish we catch is 4 or better. That's probably the smallest fish we've caught yet. And that is a great fish.
This portion of Hank's Show is brought to you by Berkeley. Catch more fish. Yeti coolers, built for the wild.
Isn't he something? He is so very, very special.
You know, one of the big questions that I'm asked is, when do you change baits? When do you change patterns? When do you change methods? Well, it varies so much on where you're at and what you're doing. I only caught 10 or 11 fish and lost 1 fish. I think I only lost 1 fish on Moosehead, and it was the biggest fish I hung. Go figure that. But normally, if I hadn't caught but 10 or 11 fish, I'm gonna be doing some switching around, some changing, some moving. But every fish we caught was 4.5 to 6 pounds. I mean, killer trophy smallmouth. So I knew I had the ticket. And if this fat boy right here is catching 5-pound smallmouth, I'm happy. It don't take a whole lot of 5-pound smallmouth to get my fun meter pegged to the max. And so the reason I was persistent and patient with the jerk bait is the quality of fish we're catching. We were catching a fish about every hour, and catching a 5-pounder every hour, I was pretty content. So to answer the question on when do you change, it's not when you're catching a 5-pounder every hour. I'm gonna let him go in this clear water. Let's see if we can watch him. It'd be really tough for wild horses to drag me off this lake before dark. But my grandson, Alec, is graduating from high school Saturday morning, and I'm gonna be there. So I got a 22-hour drive. So I'm gonna head to Union, South Carolina from Moosehead, Maine. I've been everywhere, Lord. I'm gonna tell you, To me, I had as much fun as I've ever had. I love adventure, and I was blown away when I got there after fishing in the central part of the state, fishing in 60-degree water. All of a sudden getting up there and getting in 50, 51 degree water temperature, it was completely different. So we start from scratch and put it together, and I love that. And those fish were all 4.5 to 6 pounds, and I'd love to have seen the fish I lost. I saw enough of him that I know he was a giant smallmouth. But to me, I mean, I had a ball. So I hope you enjoyed it. We figured out how to catch those big smallmouth, and it was exciting. So I hope it was half as much fun for you as it was for me, because I had a hoot. Thanks for being with me. I'll see you next week. I'm Hank Parker.
And don't forget to visit us at hankparker.com, the place for tips, giveaways, and more.
The house needs painting, the grass needs mowing. Where's he at? Gone fishing.